That moment when you spot an unexpected pocket of history clinking in your change drawer can spark a thrill few experiences match. Picture holding a single dime that carries the weight of a nation's changing mint practices, a glimpse into mid-century America's coinage saga, and the potential for serious collector value all wrapped into one small silver disc. Today's spotlight shines on the 1965 USA 1 dime, a coin born in an era of transition, bearing curious die varieties and errors that seasoned enthusiasts prize. As you lean in, get ready for a journey through its story, its quirks, and the numbers that have turned these modest-sized pieces into something much more significant. The story of the 1965 dime starts against a backdrop of shifting metals and rising demand for small change. In early 1965, rising silver prices pushed the U.S. Mint to strip circulation dimes and quarters of their silver content. Before that year, dimes were made of 90% silver, but with melting prices threatening to turn pocket change into meltdown bullion, the Treasury acted. In April, Congress suspended silver coinage for dimes and quarters, and later that year, the Mint released dimes composed of copper-nickel clad over a pure copper core, what collectors now call clad dimes. This move marked the end of an era that began with the Mercy Head dime in 1916 and ushered in the familiar Roosevelts we pass around today. It also means that the first clad dimes carry a special place in collectors' hearts. They're the bridge between silver-rich past and modern base metal circulation. Key identifying features of the 1965 dime begin with its composition, a layered sandwich of copper and cupronickel that weighs 2.27 grams and measures 17.91 millimeters across. On the obverse, you'll find Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile, his visage lifted from a photograph taken in 1945, complete with fine details in his hair, ear, and collar. The reverse features a torch set between an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing peace and strength, respectively. Yet for collectors hunting rarities, it's the subtle die markers and mint-related quirks that truly matter. Since 1965 coins were struck only at the Philadelphia facility and bore no mint mark, expert eyes search for doubled features, known as doubled dies, on the date, on Roosevelt's cheek ridge, or on the letters of Liberty. Some of the most sought-after examples exhibit faint doubling on the motto, "In God We Trust," or a slight doubling of the torch's flame lines. Identifying these varieties often requires a loupe of at least 5 times magnification, steady lighting, and a careful search for lumpy, shadowed edges around letters and numerals. Turning to market value, clad dimes of 1965 circulate by the billions, so most examples in average circulated grades trade at face value or slightly above for uncirculated grades. Yet top-quality specimens graded MS65 or higher by PCGS or NGC can command anywhere from $5 to $15, based solely on their condition. Error and variety examples elevate the stakes dramatically. For instance, a well-documented double die on the date, commonly called the 1965 dripe among die analysts, has appeared at auction fetching 5-figure sums when the doubling is bold and sharp. In one notable 2024 sale, a PCGS MS66 specimen with pronounced doubling on 1965 realized $12,500 plus fees, remarkable for a dime that began life in everyday pocket change. Lesser doubling in an MS64 holder might still bring $1,500 to $2,000. Collectors love interesting anecdotes tied to coins, and the 1965 dime has a handful. One story involves a small batch of experimental strikes in 1964 that tested multiple copper-nickel alloy blends. A few were secretly struck with a slightly different nickel content, producing a marginally darker patina and slightly altered strike characteristics. Though these pieces never reached general circulation officially, a handful escaped via mint workers' souvenir packets. These so-called 1964 experimental dimes occasionally crop up on secondary markets, and despite heated controversy over their legality, genuine examples with trace documentation have sold for upwards of $20,000. Another tale speaks to the mint's rush to resume production after the silver suspension. Production lines ran at top speed, and workers later recalled coins being struck at lightning rates, up to 600 coins per minute. That haste contributed to a higher incidence of incomplete strikes, clipped planchets, and off-center errors. Finding a dime that's slightly off-center by just 1 or 2 millimeters can still net $50 to $100 in circulated grades. Condition dramatically influences what collectors are willing to pay. In grades from about good, AG3, to extremely fine, EF40, most circulated examples trade around 10 cents to 25 cents, quick, affordable additions to typesets or error collections. In mint state, a coin graded MS-60 barely breaks $1, while MS-63 examples might see $2 to $4. Once you enter MS-65, the market becomes more selective. Coins with mirror-like fields and sharp strikes can hit $8 to $12. Above that, MS-66 and MS-67 coins of exceptional quality, especially with full, frosty luster, appear sporadically at venues like the Chicago ANA show or the Heritage auctions. A single MS-67 Roosevelt dime from 1965 with complete strike detail and flawless surfaces can top $25,000 if it carries a recognized error variety like doubling on the obverse. Another intriguing error category involves clipped planchets. In 1965, planchet lubrication issues occasionally caused the blanks to skew as they entered the coining press, resulting in coins missing a sector of their rim. Collectors classify these by the shape and percentage of the missing area, e.g., a 10% clip or a curved edge clip. Commonly, small clips might only bring $10 to $25 in lower grades, but a dramatic clip removing nearly 1/3 of the rim, especially if dramatically curved, can fetch $500 or more, depending on eye appeal. A famous example sold in 2019, a nearly half-moon clip covering 40% of the rim, realized $7,200 despite moderate wear simply because such wide clips are rare on clad material. For those who look closely, die cracks and die chips add another layer of excitement. White metal lines branching across the fields or small raised blobs near the rim signal that the die was wearing out during the production run. While minor die cracks are common and often overlooked, larger ones, snaking through Roosevelt's cheek or trailing across the torch, trigger collector interest. A dramatic die break extending from the rim through the motto into the date can be worth $200 to $400 in EF to AU grades. And when you spot a die chip that forms a tiny ear or spike on Roosevelt's chin, you've discovered a mini treasure that casual collectors often miss. Metal composition testing also reveals stories. In recent years, some advanced collectors have used handheld XRF analyzers to confirm clad composition consistency. Occasional anomalies, a nugget of slightly higher copper content or a trace of manganese, spark debates about mid-1960s planchet sourcing. While most variations fall within expected tolerances and don't shift market values much, any coin showing a mosaic of unexpected metals could draw scientific interest and auction premium. Getting your hands on high-grade 1965 dimes means knowing where to look. Original mint-wrapped rolls can still surface on auction sites like eBay, often broken up by resellers into partial rolls for graded slab mystery lots. Bank-wrapped bags, once kept in vaults, sometimes emerge at local estate sales or coin shows. If you're hunting a perfect specimen, dealer boards at major shows in Philadelphia, Dallas, and Denver can yield raw examples you can send in for grading. Seasoned collectors recommend targeting raw coins with full bands on the torch, strong peripheral devices, and no contact marks in key fields. As we prepare to explore our next featured modern-era dime with its own tales of rarity and value, keep in mind how the 1965 dime's transition story set the stage for every circulation coin that followed, including the ones you'll soon learn about. Shifting gears from that pivotal 1965 transition, our focus now lands on the 1985 Roosevelt dime, a coin that slipped quietly into pockets by the millions yet hides its own secrets in plain sight. Struck at both Philadelphia and Denver, with the Denver pieces bearing that tiny D beside the date, the 1985 dime looks, at first glance, like any standard modern issue. But seasoned collectors know that even the most seemingly mundane years can harbor intriguing die varieties, minting hiccups, and conditioned gems that elevate a humble 10-cent piece into a sought-after treasure. The mid-1980s found the U.S. Mint running at full steam to satisfy a booming appetite for small change. Arcade machines, parking meters, and payphones demanded steady supplies, and the Roosevelt dime fit the bill perfectly. In 1985 alone, the Mint churned out roughly 3.6 billion dimes at Philadelphia, bearing no mint mark, and about 2.4 billion at Denver, proudly stamped with that little D. This massive output means that virtually every pocket change cache holds countless examples bearing Franklin D. Roosevelt's familiar profile on the front and that iconic torch oak olive reverse on the back. Yet beneath the deluge of base metal-clad strikes, collectors have pinpointed specific variations that whisper of mint floor dramas, die polishing events, and planchet feed errors. On the front side, Roosevelt's visage remains crisp, his hair strands and earlobe often sharply defined in higher grades. But the true key to identifying rarities lies in examining the letters of liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and the date itself. One of the most celebrated varieties from 1985 is the repunched mint mark, RPM, on Denver pieces, catalogued by die specialist Frank Gasparo as FS401. Here, the D shows faint echoes of an earlier strike slightly shifted to the side, visible only under strong magnification, where overlapping edges create a ghost-like shadow around the letter. Enthusiasts prize these repunched mint marks because they tell the story of a die that got polished, reseated, and polished again, with each polishing cycle gradually erasing evidence of the original hub impressions, until that whispered ghost remains. Another notable die variety involves subtle doubling on the date and designer's initials. Numismatists refer to the FS101 double die obverse, where the date's curves appear softly echoed, as if two impressions overlapped. Though not as dramatic as the 1965 dripe, when the doubling is clear, particularly on the top loop of the P5, it can push values into the 3 to 4 figure range for mint state specimens. A PCGS MS65 example of this double date dime sold in late 2023 for $1,200, illustrating how a modest variation can transform a dime into a headline-grabbing auction lot. Beyond mint marks and doubling, planchet and strike errors add further layers of excitement. In 1985, the Mint's high-speed presses sometimes fed blanks a tick off-center, creating coins with a crescent-shaped blank area where metal missed the dies entirely. A 2mm off-center strike might trade for $25 to $50 in circulated grades, but examples veering 4 or 5 mm, especially if they still display full torch detail on one side, can fetch upwards of $500. Clipped planchets, too, emerged when lubrication issues or hasty blank cutting left coins missing small rim sections. A subtle 8% clip might only bring $30 in EF40, while a dramatic semicircular clip removing nearly 30% of the rim soared to $1,800 when it hit the auction block in 2022. As for overall market values, most 1985 dimes in everyday worn grades still trade at face value or a hair above. Yet once you venture into mint state territory, prices climb steadily. In typical batches, an MS60 example commands about $1 to $1.50, while MS63 coins, even without fancy variety status, might sell for $3 to $5. Full bands on the reverse, the hallmark of a fully struck torch rim and leaf devices without weakness, lift MS65 examples into the $10 to $15 range. At MS67, only the finest survivors with razor-sharp strikes and flawless fields appear, often commanding $200 to $300 apiece simply for their eye appeal. Proof collectors, meanwhile, chase the 1985 mirrors struck at San Francisco, bearing the S mint mark in deep cameo contrast. Proof 6.8 DCAM specimens, graded by top services for their frost and mirror-like fields, have realized $150 to $250 at specialized sales. A single Proof 6.9 DCAM, however, achieved $475 in a heritage auction, demonstrating the premium collector's place on that near-perfect cameo separation between the raised devices and glossy background. Stories abound about the 1985 dime's less common varieties. One involves a brief experiment with a thicker cladding layer, apparently tested on a small batch of blanks late in production. Collectors who detected these slightly heavier dimes, by weight testing at 2.35 grams instead of the standard 2.27 grams, shouted "error," and snapped them up. Confirmed examples, though hotly debated, have traded for $800 to $1,200, with grips tightened whenever a credible piece enters the market. Another anecdote recalls a mislubricated die that skidded coins across the press floor, producing faint smeared strikes and grease-filled recesses. While many such greasy strikes cleaned up poorly, a handful retained enough detail to satisfy collectors hunting greasy errors, fetching $50 to $100 when they appear. Beyond errors, 1985 dimes can tell tales through accessory markings. Certain rolls rebound from postal vaults show tiny hash marks scratched on their edges, nicknamed vault tags, used by government employees to track distribution. While these tags hold little numismatic value, they represent that hidden network of coin logistics and occasionally intrigue researchers mapping mint distribution patterns. Condition variants drive the lion's share of value differences. In circulated grades from good, G4, to about uncirculated, 58 Australian dollars, most examples hover at face or a few cents above. At mint state, the price ladder begins slowly. MS60 sits around $1, MS62 roughly $2, and MS63 jumps to $5. But when you reach MS64, coins with frostier luster and minimal impairments can fetch $8 to $10. Full bands MS65 pieces join the $12 to $15 club, while MS66, usually raw, ungraded finds saved by discerning roll hunters, might bring $60 to $80. The coveted MS67 bracket sees only a handful each year, often reserved for registry set enthusiasts willing to pay $250 to $350 for perfection. Auction records highlight just how far prices can climb for standout specimens. A 1985 D double die obverse graded MS66 Plus sold for $3,200 in June 2024, shattering prior expectations for that variety. A well-documented repunched mint mark FS401 in MS65 Plus fetched $1,800, demonstrating that RPMs command premiums even when doubling remains modest. And an exceptional MS68 full bands piece, zoom-like frosty surfaces and razor-sharp details, realized a staggering $5,500, driven not by rarity of the date but by its supremacy among thousands. Owning a standout 1985 dime isn't just a matter of numeric value. It's a tangible fingerprint of an era when coin production speed nearly collided with quality control, producing occasional anomalies prized by those who know where to look. Whether tracking the faint ghost of a repunched D, chasing double die echoes on the date, or marveling at a perfectly struck full-band specimen, each coin carries a tale of mint floor drama and collector passion. With the 1985 dimes narratives now under your belt, from repunched mint mark intrigue to condition-driven value swings, the stage is set to meet its modern counterpart, the 2004 Roosevelt dime, and the surprising errors that have made that year a favorite among today's error hunters. And just as the centennial celebration yielded unexpected treasures, the 2018 Lincoln penny emerged with its own set of surprises, proof that even the most recent issues can conceal numismatic marvels. In 2018, the U.S. Mint continued refining its zinc core, copper-plated formula, all while ramping up automated processes to meet growing demand. Yet metal fatigue, die wear, and fleeting die pairings combined to produce error coins that savvy collectors snapped up within months of release. By following this story, you'll learn to spot that rare double die profile, trace the faint outline of a misaligned mint mark, and recognize the subtle die cracks that can transform a 1-cent piece into a collection centerpiece. The backstory begins with the Mint's efforts to optimize production. After experimenting in previous years with enhanced strike pressures and fresh steel hubs, Mint engravers in Philadelphia and Denver aimed for sharper details on the wheat-free 2018 reverses. The obverse stuck with Brenner's classic portrait and the inscriptions that generations have come to know. But behind the scenes, a new set of dies, machined faster, installed by robots, and cycled through high-speed presses, presented fresh opportunities for anomalies. By mid-year, collectors began sharing images online of coins showing doubled numerals in the date and irregularities in the mint mark, revealing that perfection still eludes even the most advanced minting lines. At first glance, a standard 2018 penny presents a bright copper sheen, a crisp 2018 date, and a tiny P or D mint mark nestled just above the lower rim on the obverse. The reverse features the stylized Lincoln Memorial design introduced in 2010, surrounded by United States of America and E Pluribus Unum. Yet hidden within these familiar elements are key identifying features for rare varieties. The most dramatic of these is the double die obverse. Look closely at the 2 in 2018, and you'll sometimes catch a faint shadow duplicate, as if a second strike misaligned by a fraction of a millimeter imprinted an echo image. On mint marks, a slight repunch or tilt can create tiny serifs or ghost lines around the D, betraying a second impression. One of the earliest 2018 anomalies to command attention was the broken rim die crack variety. Collectors noticed thin hairline fissures beginning near Lincoln's lower shoulder and radiating outward, crossing the date and even slicing through part of the memorial on the reverse. These cracks resulted from tempered die steel succumbing to repeated stress, and while most die cracks remain superficial, some 2018 specimens feature cracks as long as 2 mm, highly visible under bright, direct light. Because die cracks evolve as the die deteriorates, early-run coins display the most pronounced, eye-catching ridges, making them particularly valuable if found in high grade. Auction records for the 2018 double die obverse quickly escalated. In late 2023, a Philadelphia Mint example, certified MS66RD, red, sold for $1,750, demonstrating that modern-date errors retain strong collector appeal. A Denver counterpart, graded MS65RB, red-brown, with a sharp doubled 8, fetched $950 at auction earlier this year. Meanwhile, a high-grade MS67RD mintmark repunch variety reached $2,100, signaling that crisp definition and full original luster amplify collector demand. For the broken rim die crack coins, which are more plentiful but vary widely in crack prominence, strong 58 Australian dollars pieces trade between $75 and $150, while pristine MS65 examples climb into the $400 to $600 range. Beyond doubling in cracks, die chips and cut errors surfaced among 2018 cents. A die chip occurs when a tiny fragment breaks away from the die face, leaving raised blobs or semicircular crescents on the coin. Several 2018 D coins exhibit chips at the rim just below the date, appearing as little bumps that stand out against the flat field. Collectors prize these oddities. One MS64RD chip example sold for $300, because they're reproducible on multiple coins from the same die, enabling attribution to specific die numbers. Cut errors, where larger die fragments detach and leave a blank swath of metal, are rarer but have shown up on 2018 rolls. A single piece graded MS63RD achieved $1,200 at regional auction thanks to its dramatic missing rim appearance. The human stories behind these modern marvels circulate just as fast as the coins themselves. One collector recalled buying a $5 roll of Lincoln cents from a supermarket change machine. While sifting through them at home, he spotted a doubled 2 on a 2018 P, then spent the next week scouring online forums to confirm it wasn't damage. When it sold for $1,200 through an eBay auction, he used the proceeds to acquire a complete set of 2009 bicentennial varieties. In another tale, a professional numismatist inspecting raw rolls for a local dealership noticed a faint crack bowing under the S in states on the reverse. That single find prompted a broader hunt through over 2,000 coins, netting 10 additional specimens and effectively launching a club-wide die crack challenge at the next coin show. Condition remains the cornerstone of value. For 2018 pennies, circulated errors often trade for modest premiums, $2 to $5 above face for worn double dies, $5 to $10 for visible die cracks. At $50 Australian, light flattening on Lincoln's cap and cheek, era varieties jump to $25 to $40 depending on crack length or doubling sharpness. In uncirculated grades, the spread widens. MS60RD, full red, double dyes start around $75, climbing to $300 by MS65, while MS67RD examples with exceptional eye appeal, full red color, well-centered strike, and pronounced doubling, can breach $1,500. Die chip and cud specimens share similar patterns, although dramatic cuds in high grade occasionally reach four-figure territory. What makes 2018 errors particularly fascinating is the rapid feedback loop between find and hype. Social media platforms like Instagram and YouTube amplify live unboxings, prompting immediate bidding wars on online marketplaces. As soon as photos of a sharp doubled zero in the date appear, watch listings multiply overnight. Price guides for 2018 varieties update monthly rather than annually, reflecting the fast-paced modern market. Regional dealers often reference realized prices on recent auctions rather than catalog estimates, while online coin valuation apps refresh values weekly. This dynamism can be thrilling for collectors but also demands vigilance. Savvy buyers track recent sales and forum discussions to gauge real-time demand. Amid modern automation, veteran collectors still swear by eyes on glass. The subtlety of some 2018 double dyes, where doubling measures mere tenths of a millimeter, means only a bright light, a steady 10 times loop, and months of experience will suffice. For die cracks, specialized narrow-beam LED lights reveal rising lines, diffused lighting can mask them. Many collectors recommend photographing suspect coins under multiple lights and angles, then overlaying images digitally to isolate anomalies. This digital-analog hybrid approach blends centuries-old numismatic skills with 21st-century technology. As we wrap up our exploration of these three remarkable pennies, consider the broader significance. A seemingly humble penny, issued by the nation's most efficient minting operation, can surprise us, teach us, and reward us. From the double dyes of 1992 to the mule errors of 2014, to the high-tech glitches of 2018, each variety tells a chapter in America's ongoing coinage saga. Whether you're an experienced collector or happen to peek into an old jar of change, keep your loop ready. Because the next groundbreaking find might just be waiting among your spare cents, ready to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary.